Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Dr. Nespral, a child and adolescent psychiatrist practicing in Butuan City, Agusan del Norte, and I will be your moderator for tonight. The Philippine Society for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, or PSCAP, in partnership with Medicam, has prepared a three-part mental health talk show series, the PSCAP Conversations, to reach out to a wider audience and help instill awareness regarding mental health issues and concerns that could help our children and adolescents and their families during these uncertain and challenging times, which is our new normal. For tonight, the second in our talk show series, the PISCAP, in collaboration with the ADHD Society of the Philippines, welcomes you to Challenges in the Care of Children and Families in Living the New Normal, with our topic for tonight, Lockdown with ADHD, Stories of Family Struggles in Overcoming the Challenges of ADHD in the Time of the Pandemic. We are currently live streaming in the PPS PISCAP Task Force on Mental Health FB page and in the FB page and of the ADHD Society. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call on Dr. Vanessa Cainhug, the Vice President of the PISCAP, for our welcoming remarks.
Good evening to the Philippine Society of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Board of Directors, the PISCAP President, Dr. Andrea Concepcion, the PISCAP past presidents and PISCAP members, to the officers and members of the ADHD Society of the Philippines, and each and everyone in the audience, I would like to welcome all of you. Much has been said about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and its management. But it is a wonder how children with ADHD and their families are coping right now during this third wave of COVID ECQ caused by the Delta variant. We are now on our 17th month of staying at home, and I can only imagine the stress of kids with ADHD. So in tonight's PSCAP talk show, we have invited the ADHD Society of the Philippines so we may all learn from the real life situation. We also have an esteemed child psychiatrist to talk about ADHD from a professional point of view. So again, good evening and may tonight's discussion be very fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cainhug. Next, I would like to call on Mr. Peter Rayson Claudio, the product manager of Renuv and Valpros of Medicam, for some words from our sponsor.
Good evening, the officers and members of the Philippine Society for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the ADHD Society of the Philippines, and all our guests tonight. It is both my privilege and pleasure on behalf of Medicam Pharmaceuticals, the CNS division of Unilab, to virtually welcome you to tonight's webinar. We are very delighted to have you with us tonight. As your trusted healthcare partner, on top of offering you with quality products such as risperidone Renuv and sodium valproate plus valproic acid Valpros, we are also committed to enriching the continuing medical education of our healthcare partners, as well as enhancing patient education of our fellow Filipinos. Once more, on behalf of Medicam Pharmaceuticals, I welcome you all to tonight's very timely and very engaging webinar. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Claudio. Medicam has always been a supporter for psychoeducation, especially for the PISCAP. A lot of times, some children have often been labeled as matigas ang ulo, malikot, kulang sa pansin, kulang sa motivation, and so on. These are also our kids who often have difficulties in school. But sasabihan na some parents or teachers would have complaints. But with some accommodations, they can actually excel. With our current pandemic situation, a lot of our children and teens are having difficulty adjusting. more so children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. For tonight, we would like to encourage a more interactive means of learning, and we would like you, our audience, to type in your questions, comments, and experiences, and our panel of speakers would do their best to share their knowledge and experience. As a prelude to our main event, and to set the mood in tonight's webinar with some educational entertainment, the Philippine Society for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry would like to present to you a song about ADHD. So allow me to give you a brief background prepared by Dr. Concepcion regarding this song. So in 2007 to 2008, a group therapy program for children with ADHD called A Journey Through ADHD was developed by Dr. Rodera and Andrea M. Concepcion, our current PISCAP president. A couple of years after graduating from her fellowship training in child and adolescent psychiatry at the UP-PGH, through the kind invitation and trust of Dr. Cynthia Lanes, who was her mentor and consultant at the said institution, and through an educational grant to develop the program. The program was offered to children with ADHD at the ADHD Clinic of UPPGH in 2007 to 2008. Interesting activities were designed per session in the entire duration of the program. This included the recording of a song that talks about ADHD, sung by the children themselves who participated in the group therapy. The song's objective is to inform the public about ADHD as well as to feature the talents children with ADHD are capable of creating and achieving. So the song is entitled Kwento ni Balilit, a song about ADHD, composed and recorded in 2008, composed and co-arranged by Dr. Concepcion, performed and recorded by the children who were part of the group therapy program, and it describes the lives and struggles of these children with positive messages on how to help and understand children with ADHD. The endeavor was sincerely intended for an enriching and learning experience in the lives of these children. As a disclosure, the names, photos, and other information about the children involved in the recording have been granted proper consent by their parents and guardians. So we invite you all to listen to the song.
Ako'y matang makulit, paulit-ulit, paikot-ikot, napakalikot. Sabi nila ako'y titik-iti, di mapakali sa isang tabi. Mapilit na ingay, pasigaw-sigaw, pabigla-bigla, napakagaslaw. Maramdamin pasaway, masumpong iyak, lagi akong tinatawag na batang sutil. Ako'y batang may ADHD, batang may ADHD. Hindi nila alam kahit ako'y ganito, mabait, matalino, masunurin ako. Di ko sinasadya na ako'y ganito. Inyong pangunawa sana'y ibigay, tulungan marin, unawain ako, unawain niyo ako. Ito ang kailangan na bulilit na katulad ko. Si teacher sa eskwelahan laging nagagalit, ako daw ay tulala, malayo ang tanaw. Ang assignment ko di ko natatapos, mababang score sa exam. Mga kaklase ko sa'kin ay nagagalit, ginugulot, inuuna ako daw sila. Di nila ako naintindihan, mga kaibigan ko ay humiwalay. Ako'y batang may ADHD, batang may ADHD. Hindi nila alam kahit
Wow, thank you very much, Dr. Concepcion, for that song. It really strikes home. And then we have a comment here. There's a mommy that naiiyak sa song kasi swak na swak sa kids nila. And it's a very accurate description of how our children with ADHD are sometimes negatively viewed. But the song also gives hope that despite ADHD, they are still children, just children who just need support and guidance. And when given the nurturing environment, will actually flourish. So this is the first time a lot of people have heard the song. I think a lot are excited about the song. And thank you again, Dr. Concepcion, for that. Um, with the help of our expert and our panel, we hope to give hope to children with ADHD and their families that despite the pandemic, we can overcome these challenges. So let me introduce our panel of speakers for tonight. Our first speaker is Dr. Genuina Ranoy. She graduated from the Manila Central University College of Medicine and finished her residency training in general psychiatry in the Department of Psychiatry of the Medical City, and her post-residency training in Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, section of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine of the University of the Philippines, Philippine General Hospital. She is currently the training officer of the Medical City Department of Psychiatry and is the chairman of the Board of Accreditation, Specialty Board of the Philippine Psychiatric Association. She is also a psychiatry consultant at St. Luke's Medical Center, Quezon City and Global City. She is a fellow of the Philippine Psychiatric Association, a fellow of the Philippine Society for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and an international fellow of the American Psychiatric Association. She also has trainings on cognitive behavioral therapy at the Institute and dialectic behavioral therapy for complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I'd like to say good night. Call on Doctora Vina. Good evening, Doctora.
Good evening, Dr. Ins. Good evening, everyone.
Ayan. And then next is Mommy Alu, Miss Alu Aran. She is Mommy Alu is a graduate of Bachelor of Arts, major in communication at Ateneo de Manila University. She is a senior communication strategist and editor for social media website www.dineph.com. She was a previous faculty at Enron Colleges on event management. She is a writer, blogger, and digital content producer. She was a former board officer of the ADHD Society of the Philippines and is the current head of the society. But most important of all for tonight, she is a mom to a 20-year-old son diagnosed with ADHD. Mommy Alu, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for joining us to those who are listening and watching right now. Thank you.
Next is our teen speaker, Nicoli Bastien Tabares, or Nico. Nico is 15 years old and he was diagnosed with ADHD inattentive type at age 7. He is the youngest among the three children of Mr. Sunday Beltran Tabares and Mrs. Bernadette Tabares. He is an incoming grade 9 student this school year at Will School of Antipolo. He started Taekwondo when he was 11 years old and is currently a brown belter. He is into arts and loves Minecraft, coding, and animation. He also loves animals, especially dogs, and loves watching comedy shows. And he hopes to become a digital animator in the future. Good evening, Nico.
Good evening, everyone, and Doctora. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Our last but not the least is our parent speaker, Mommy Patis FAmador. Mommy Patis is a working mom with two daughters. She has been in the e-commerce industry since 2010 and is currently the e-commerce manager in one of the leading retailers in the Philippines. Mommy Patis's second daughter was recently diagnosed with ADHD. This has led her to discover a new perspective in parenting and an understanding of the gift of ADHD to her family. So, everyone, this is our panel of speakers for tonight, and I hope you open your hearts and minds to their expertise and experiences. So, I would now like to call on Dr. Rawina to know more about ADHD and how the pandemic may affect our children with ADHD. Dr. Rawina?
Thank you again, Inch, and good evening again, everyone. I just want to say something also about the song. I was really touched. Parang that song is the story of a child with ADHD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Straight to the heart of a ADHD child, Dr. Rawina, no?
Right. Okay, so the title of our discussion, Lockdown with ADHD, Stories of Family Struggles in Overcoming the Challenges of ADHD in the Time of the Pandemic. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. This is a brain disorder that affects many areas of functions of an individual. And there are three core symptoms that we have to remember, as described in the DSM-5. They are inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. This may also present in more than one context, meaning most of those who are diagnosed to have ADHD may present with social, emotional, physical, and academic difficulties leading to functional impairment. It is not uncommon to have other problems present, like learning disorder, tic disorder, internalizing disorders like depression and anxiety, externalizing disorders like conduct disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder. We can also see autism spectrum disorder. So all this may occur together with ADHD. And there are three subtypes. One is the combined inattentive and hyperactive, which is the more common one, most common one, predominantly hyperactive and predominantly inattentive. Next slide, please. A child who has symptoms of hyperactivity shows the following: hyperactive, having difficulty sitting still, especially in calm or quiet surroundings, constantly fidgeting, difficulty concentrating on task, excessive physical movement, excessive talking. Their energy is always at a high level that carers have difficulty keeping up, and they are described as if driven by a motor. Inattention may be presented as short attention span and being easily distracted. They have poor short-term memory, appearing forgetful, or losing a lot of things. They have difficulty organizing tasks, and they make careless mistakes. No matter how intelligent they are, uh, they do make the easiest ones, easiest questions. Difficulty sticking to tasks that are tedious or time consuming, appearing and seemingly listening but are unable to carry out instructions just because their attention is somewhere else. Constantly changing activity or task. And one reason for this is because they easily get distracted. When impulsive, these things are observed: difficulty awaiting their turns, acting without thinking, thus they proceed with whatever they feel like doing at that particular time, interrupting conversations, and they can be intrusive. So there is little or no sense of danger. No matter what you say, they don't listen. It's just something so enjoyable for them. So these symptoms can cause significant problems in a child's life, such as underachievement at school, poor social interaction with other children, and even with adults, and problems with discipline as well. But there are situations, no, when the child is very smart, and most of the time when this is the situation for a child, we don't really notice that their performances are deteriorating because they still easily pass.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Right?
Mm-mm. Doc, Doc Rina, uh, segue ko lang before I ask you a question kasi there was a comment from FB from Miss Maria Rosalia Pereña Abaya that she said that di ko po alam na may theme song ang ADHD. So, the first three slides that you gave, Doktora, swak na swak doon sa theme song ng ADHD kanina. 'Di ba? And then, although yun yung palaging mga symptoms natin, Doktora, are there actually any differences in presentation kapag babae or lalaki yung bata?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are females with ADHD. They're reported to have fewer hyperactive or impulsive symptoms, and they have more inattentive symptoms. Okay. So furthermore, females with ADHD, they present more commonly with the inattentive type.
Mm.
So when they are inattentive, they are very quiet, and we don't notice them. So there
Yeah.
are disruptive behaviors in
Mm-mm.
females. And again, because of this, it may contribute to referral bias, causing under-identification and lack of treatment for girls.
Mm-mm. So, mommies, daddies, and parents who are listening, if you notice any of the symptoms or yung mga na-mention ni Dr. Wina kanina, pwede din po siya sa girls, ha? Pero in girls, medyo mas quiet sila. And then we have to be mindful kasi baka mamaya, hindi lahat po ng tahimik okay. Baka mas kailangan maging vigilant tayo with our daughters.
Yeah, that's so nice to note, Inch, no? Hindi
Mm.
lahat ng tahimik, okay.
Okay. Yes, Doc. Mm.
Okay. Sige. Next slide, please. So there are also differences, no, in the manifestations of the predominant symptoms according to age range. So from Yakapap, Textbook of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, for preschool, they may be able to stay focused only for 3 minutes. Okay? And most of the time, they do not listen and there's no sense of danger. So in the primary school, usually at 6, primary school, to 10 or 12, activities are sustained for 10 minutes. They can be forgetful, easily distracted, restless, intrusive, and disruptive. And for the younger children, adolescents, attention is maintained less than 30 minutes. They have difficulty focusing or planning, and they can be fidgety and reckless. So bear in mind, that they can only maintain 30 minutes of attention. They need to have breaks constantly.
Very important yung sinabi niyo, Dr. Ravina, kasi school na naman tayo ngayon. And online pa sila. So, for the parents, teachers who are listening, please take note of the attention span of our children. This one is not only for parang ADHD. This one would be good for all kids. So, ito po yung age-appropriate likot or age-appropriate things that we have to look out for. Pero Doc Rina, sometimes, like in my clinic, some parents would say, normal lang naman yung malikot. Ganyan din naman ako nung bata ako. Have you had that kind of experience, Doktora?
Well, as you well know, Inge, no, we hear that a lot of times. And it's true that in many situations, the child may just be manifesting upper normal kalikutan.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, still consistent with the developmental age.
Mm-hmm.
So many parents would worry if they see things, the behaviors, the symptoms that have been mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
see this in the children, they would remember they also had them when they were young, or they still are having them as adults. Okay, so when this
Yes.
happened, and in some way remember how it affected them negatively, they seek consult for evaluation, which is good. We encourage that.
Mm-hmm.
And for the parents
Mm-mm.
naman to believe it can resolve without intervention, probably what they are seeing may not have direct impact on the social, emotional, or occupational activities of the child.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-mm.
thing is, it is important to note if these behaviors are already affecting functions negatively.
Okay.
And another thing, so
Yes,
one
Doc.
reason also that parents recognize this in themselves and at the same time they see this in their children is because ADHD has a strong genetic predisposition.
Mhm. Yes. So, mommies, mommies, daddies, and our relatives and families out there, hindi po ibig sabihin malikot kayo, okay lang malikot din yung anak ninyo. Especially if, as Dr. Ravina mentioned, affected na other areas of function. And pag ganun po, it would be good to seek support or help, which we will talk about later on. Doc Rina?
Thank you. Next slide, please. So ADHD and the pandemic. So we see these things now. There is dramatic increase in screen time, canceled activities, home quarantines, and all thanks to online learning, yung is increased screen time.
Mhm.
Emotional dysregulation is exacerbated by frustration, boredom, and stress of the pandemic living. We all experience that, no? Even us, adults, okay, who are
Mm-mm.
supposedly more regulated in our reactions, emotions.
Mm-mm.
Learning remotely without the dedicated time and attention of in-person teachers and classmates, the social isolation and diminished physical outlets. Physical interaction is a very basic human need, and this is significantly minimized. So with all these things happening, parang we kind of expect already that many would be experiencing difficulties, frustrations.
Yes. Mm-mm. Yes,
Yeah.
Doc.
Yeah.
I have a question here lang po, Doc, from our FB, I think, or ano. Um, you mentioned kanina po like it can go through the lifespan yung ADHD. So a parent is asking, pag tungtong ng teen, nung naging teen na yung kanyang child, nabawasan na ang pagka-hyperactive niya. Pero he is still inattentive at minsan impulsive din. If I stop his therapy ba, magkakaroon ng relapse yung condition niya. He is still on speech and reading therapy at 15. Dapat bang life coach na? What are your thoughts about this one, Dr. Rowena?
Well, when they are already seeking consult, no, therapies, that's when they are taught, on coping skills. Okay, so that even without medications and even if they would proceed into having those symptoms in adulthood, they have learned something on how to cope with those symptoms better. Okay. As we know, no, the ones that are retained are mostly the inattentive symptoms, inattention. So
Yeah.
the hyperactivity, most of them gets resolved. Mas madami yung inattention that are retained. No? But as I've said,
Mm-mm.
so when they are seeking therapies, that's the best time, no, for them to practice it so that they would be able to utilize it whenever it's needed, even if they
Mm-mm.
become adults already. If
Mm-mm.
it's too much, yung symptoms niya is really hindering from their functions, probably you need to have more sessions, no, with your therapist.
Yes. I think it's a case to case basis, doktora, no, as they grow older. And therapy naman, Depends. If as long as the child is learning the coping mechanisms that you mentioned, I think the stronger, the better. So, sana po hindi biglang tigil yung therapy because he would probably get something out of it in the long run.
And when we're, when they're having therapy, the parents also learn.
Yes.
So when they learn, eventually they would be the ones reminding their children, or even showing it to their children, modeling what they have learned from their therapies.
Yes, agree with that one, Doctora. One last question, Doctora, before we move on to later. This is connected to the screen time that you talked about. This one is from FB. Thank you for hosting the seminar. May tanong lang po. Is the attention span indicated from your slides the same for online learning or magkakaroon na po ba ng adjustment? Meron na ba, Doktora Mina?
Okay. There were studies before, no, that showed that even 7 minutes of screen time would affect the attention span, no, of children 9 years below.
Mm.
So how much more, I think now, no, when everything is done online,
Yeah.
even physical education is done online. So I think this is a big factor in increasing the or exacerbating the problems with attention.
Yes, Doc. I think it might still, there are studies already, pero marami pang kailangang i-observe because we're still in the second year of the pandemic. Palabas pa lang po yung ibang mga exacerbated symptoms natin from ADHD. So, yeah. That's all muna for now, Doktora, from my questions.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we would like also to ask, what has been going on, with Ma'am Patis. Which behaviors do you find the hardest to manage at this time for your child?
Hi, good evening, Doctor, and good evening to everyone. So the hardest behavior that we find hardest to manage is when our daughter is in a bad mood. So when she is in a good mood, parang ka nasa carnival, parang ka nasa party, saya-saya. But once she is in the bad mood, she can't let go. Parang yung pag-focus niya sa lahat ng pagiging inattentive niya, magpo-focus talaga siya on what made her arrive in that bad mood. So, kunyari minsan, dahil kinukulit siya kung nagawa niya na yung homework niya, ng dad niya, gagalit siya, and hindi niya i-let go. To the point na I or one of us will need to appease her. And minsan, hindi talaga niya papigilan. Aabutan kami na hindi na namin alam kung ano yung gagawin para ma-manage siya. Yung mahirap sa amin.
Yeah. That is a common complaint, no? Observations of parents with their children. No? And as mentioned earlier, Ma'am Patis, no, it's not only seen in one context. No? There may be some emotional, social problems, no, that can develop from this or co-occur with the ADHD. So it is very important for us to recognize if there are comorbid conditions of the child so that we can have other interventions as well. So yung ADHD, it's already very frustrating, I'm sure, for your daughter. No matter how much you would want to perform, it's because of the inattention or even the hyperactivity or impulsivity. These things get in the way, na-frustrate siya eh. And probably that's the reason also she becomes anxious or she becomes sad out of her frustration, seeing herself not performing so well. And also I'm sure na frustrate ka rin, Mami Patis, ha? You
Yes.
probably know also the ability of your child, kaya lang bakit hindi nagpe-perform.
Mhm. Maybe to add, Doktora, yung challenge, kasi you mentioned not performing. So one of the hardest specific experience that we had was when our daughter was doing a math quiz. She
Mm.
reviewed for it the night before. She was
Yeah.
ready. She did exercises. And then when it came to the test, as in, parang nag-mental block.
Yeah.
So she couldn't even answer one question. And I believe the way the class was being managed was that once you're done, you show your answer to the teacher on the Zoom. And she couldn't. She was and I was trying to manage her already to tell her na sige, formula lang yan. Gusto mo babigay ko na yung formula kasi parang talagang ano lang naman siya, math, 'di ba? But she didn't want. She said that's cheating, mom. So I okay, but the hardest was that you knew that she's really trying,
Mm.
but she can't. Because as a parent, it's so hard because you can't also go inside her and tell her this is how you can overcome it. And that was my most parang helpless feeling at the time. And she started crying and couldn't stay in the class anymore. And yung as a parent, hindi mo na talaga alam kung paano mo gagawin. Hindi mo siya masosolve eh. Hindi mo siya masosolve for her. But she can't also solve it herself. So yun yung mahirap.
Mommy
Yeah.
patis. um, this was medyo overwhelming at that time. So, did you know who to approach? How? I mean, how to approach regarding this concern?
Well, at that time, in terms of the studies, it was we tried to talk to the advisor, school advisor. However, on their end, they were just sige, we'll give her a makeup class, parang ganyan, a makeup exam. But we didn't get answers there, and we were really trying to find ways to understand her, like see what was happening with her, kasi it was something that we couldn't answer yet.
Yeah. Okay. One question lang, Dr. Ravina, from the chat box. Regarding, I think, the behaviors also in the parents. This one is, my son is 10 years old, and is it okay to explain to my son that he has ADHD? Meron po bang time, age range that you should start explaining the behaviors that they are manifesting?
Well, we don't really have that concrete age, no, that we would say this is the best time. No? Again, it's a case-to-case basis, depending on what we think, no, how the child would perceive it, would take it. No? Some parents would decide against telling them very early on. Until such time, probably they would realize it on their own. Okay? Because they fear that they might use this as an excuse for not doing some of their responsibilities. Okay? But again, no, for them also, for me, no, if the child is ready, then even us, no, the therapists, the psychiatrists, the pediatricians, no, would be able to help, no, explain to them better. Because most of the time, when they know what's going on with them, they themselves can do something about this.
Yeah. See, maybe it's not the particular diagnosis, Dr. Ravina, but the symptoms or the behavior that they see para lang ma-pinpoint, ma-manage. Kasi when you know what the problem is or what the concern is, you're better able to make adjustments. So
Right.
not
Yeah.
particularly diagnosis.
Yeah, yeah, that's also very important, no, Hinge, no, discussing the symptoms, because yes, we address the symptoms. These are the ones that we address. No? We just have to evaluate, no, the child too. Some children would really want to know exactly the name of what they are experiencing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm sure you have
Mhm.
experienced that too with some of your patients.
Yes, Doctora.
Mm,
Mm-mm. Uh, that's the last question for now, Doctora. I'm saving the other questions for later.
okay, yeah. Okay, next slide, please. So, how do we manage ADHD from your home? Okay. So, this is more than a disorder of attention. It influences social skills, communication, morning routines, afternoon routines, bedtime, the technology use, eating habits, homework, and anything requiring coordination, even planning, foresight. And in addition, your child's ADHD affects other people around him, especially family members. Next slide, please. So these are some of the behavior management strategies. First is we need to structure the day. Structure is crucial during this prolonged disruption. Um, We've been on this pandemic for going on to 1.5 years or
Yes.
more.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem that we can see the end of this. So, especially with the younger kids, it is important to have a schedule that's posted somewhere at home that shows what they're going to do at that day. So we don't have to be, but we don't have to be very strict, when we write something there for them to do. We don't have to be very strict on following the time exactly because this is supposedly just a guide on what to do. And parents do not have to be reminding the child all the time. So less stress on the child and less stress on the parents. Second, we have to clear the workspace. For children who have trouble focusing, having a work space that's free of distraction helps them get into the mindset that they need to concentrate. For kids who are easily distracted, having a dedicated workspace that is neat and functional is very helpful for getting engaged during any kind of remote learning lesson. The other one is we turn off notifications. These notifications just pop up on our computers and can disrupt concentration. So we make sure that they are turned off before our kids are logging into classes or sitting down to do assignments. So just go to the notification center and turn it off. Do not disturb. So these strategies actually can be used by everyone. It's not only for children who have ADHD, but for everyone. Okay? Even for adults, for us.
Yes.
Next slide, please. So how do we help the child, no, in the lessons themselves, in the school setup itself? We help them connect with the teacher. So for kids with ADHD, the personal connection to the teacher is crucial to the learning, and it's harder to establish remotely than when they were in the classroom. When they were in the classroom, tumigaw lang sila or raise their hands. No? It's also more daunting for kids now to ask questions on Zoom and more difficult for teachers to know who's struggling and needs extra attention. That's why it's important for kids to ask for one-on-one help. Most teachers are very helpful. They're so open to this. They are very approachable on helping the children. So encourage kids to reach out to the teachers to say, I have a question, I want to share this thing with you, or I'd like to discuss this topic with you. Another one, think in terms of learning bursts. No? What does this mean? Instead of thinking of a school day devoted to learning running from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., it will be good to think in terms of learning bursts. Well, as research shows, the children can only really focus and work effectively for 45 minutes at the most. Sa atin ba, as adults, How
Medyo
long?
shorter yata tayo, Doktora.
Okay. So we call this chunking. Engaging kids for a period of time that's realistic for their attention span. And then giving them a break. Kids with, again, ADHD in particular benefit from when parents are able to set clear expectations in advance for how long each chunk will last and what they are to do in the time period. And then follow up to see if they did the work as expected. Most likely, they have more output when you do this chunking. Another one is make it multi-sensory. This is a passive sit and listen and what's kind of experience. So is this is especially hard for kids with ADHD to focus on. So making it multi-sensory can enhance concentration. So even if it's just jotting down a few main ideas or drawing or picture or writing down the things that the teachers are writing on the whiteboard, this also would promote processing and retention. So if what the teacher is saying is associated with a drawing, it's easier for them to remember. So in school, little red and blue chips or bars or whatever toys are used to help younger kids visualize addition or subtraction. They tend to be able to concentrate more. At home, it could be whatever is available. Kahit M&M's nga eh. That's pwede because it's so colorful. Or you can have a whiteboard or something else that they can use to draw a picture or write along with the spelling lesson rather than just listening. Another one is alternate activities. We provide them with other activities. Think about what motivates your child and alternate activities that are less appealing to them. So hindi maganda na all throughout the day, no, lahat yon a subject that they don't like. That's not interesting enough for them. So this, it's you can do this, no, when they're doing their schoolwork. And with those, they enjoy more. Okay? So alternate. This will help to stagger the schedule and activities based on less preferred things, being followed by highly preferred things. So if they're expected to do 45 minutes or an hour of work a teacher has sent home, it can be followed by a favorite activity, having a snack or a walk or playing a video game. So it's all right to give them those things, no, in between things that are uninteresting to them. Next slide, please. So for behavioral management, I heard Ma'am Patis, no, the frustration that she's observing in her daughter and their own frustration. So the best things that we can do, no, is we use positive attention and make it big. No? Positive attention is the most powerful motivator when we have what we have for influencing children's behavior. And with kids who have ADHD, it's helpful to make that attention as powerful as possible. So they need to be given feedback. Like if they did some projects, you can comment on the outcome of the projects. Okay? Oh, this looks very neat. This looks very nice. So it is the product of their effort. We need to think about how long we give the positive attention, how close we are when we give it, and how specific we are, and the tone of our voice. So we also get our kids set up in advance because we need to set up expectations. For elementary students, it is recommended to focus the night before on the child's schedule for the next day, just to make sure everything they need will be on hand and they need it. Diba? It's so common that they forget something. They did everything the night before. They prepared just because it wasn't placed in the appropriate place. No? Nalilimutan that they did it.
Yes, Doc.
Uh-huh. For older students, setting them up with calendars, no, will generate reminders about what's coming up. And for us, no, for the parents, for the adults, no, be present when you are there. Be present when you are present. What does this mean? We know many parents are juggling childcare responsibilities with remote work. As Mami Batista mentioned, no, she's also working, and at the same time caring for the kids. So when there are two caregivers, no, a couple, often it's effective if they do shifts in taking care of the children. And lastly, mindful parenting. Next slide, please. So what's this? The practice of mindfulness provides tools for cultivating focus, resilience, and well-being, both you as the parent and your child's. They take advantage of the brain's innate capacity to rewire itself. We already know from studies that meditation, mindfulness activities really help us. This is an ability we all maintain at any age. So in a way that support the rest of the ADHD care, you can build skills such as this for yourself and for your children. Attention and awareness, instead of distractibility and operating on autopilot. Responsiveness, instead of just mindlessly reacting. Intentional, creative problem solving, instead of just reliance of what we have learned before. No? I'm so glad to hear from Mami Pati, no, that she really tried her best, no, to learn more about this and still seeking constantly what are the other interventions she can give to her daughter.
Mhm.
So all of that is much harder, no, without compassion for yourself and the others. We can be very self-critical, no, and sometimes feel guilty. What did I do wrong?
Mhm. I did notice nga, Doc Rina, that when the parents are aware of their own moods, it's very important, their own moods and their limitations. They are better able to respond to the needs of their children. So to parents, be kind to yourself. Don't be too self-critical, as Dr. Vina said. A reminder to our parents that you have to take care of yourselves, because the kids will mirror your mood. You will be their role models. And then if you take care of yourselves, you become better, mindful parents.
Mm, yeah, oo. It's
Mm-mm.
easier to get affected, no, by the moods of your children if we don't notice that we are angry ourselves, we are scared ourselves, we are exhausted. And this happens when we don't do self-care.
Mm-mm.
So by practicing, hopefully, mindfulness, we'll be able to promote our own resilience and well-being. So this is not just for the children's sake, for your child's sake. This is also for your sake.
Mhm, mm.
And if you're better, actually, you're happier, you'd be more capable of taking care of your child.
Mhm. Uh, because sometimes, as Dr. Ravina said, that uh, pag galit na yung bata, galit din kayo. Escalate ng escalate na siya. Doc Rina, I just have a question here. I'll condense the question na there are some behavioral symptoms kasi, specifically yung mga ano na anxiety and depression, uh, like if treated, nawawala ba yung mga comorbidities like anxiety and depression?
If the ADHD is treated
Yes,
or
doc.
around.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Well, as we have seen, I'm sure, no, those who are treating children who have ADHD with a comorbid anxiety, depression, or other emotional problems, no, once those comorbid conditions are addressed, no, even the symptoms of the ADHD sometimes nag-i-improve din. No?
Mm-mm.
Or even, or the other way around. No? When we address also the symptoms of the ADHD, the anxiety, is also improving. No?
Mm-mm.
Nag-improve din siya. Okay?
Mm-mm.
So, because we have seen a lot of cases, nagiging anxious yung bata because just like what Mami Patricia mentioned a while ago, yung frustration ng daughter niya, she
Yeah.
studied all night, and yet she wasn't able to deliver. How
Mm-mm.
frustrating that can be. Di ba?
Yes.
Nakakatad yun. Okay? And
Yes.
if that happens all the time, talagang persistent anxiety and the depression.
Yes. So, uh, it's when a child has ADHD, we look at it holistically. Hindi pwedeng ADHD lang, but the functions, their functions, ano yung mga affected. So we want to target all those little areas also to improve the child. Kasama syempre yung parenting natin. Dapat okay talaga kayo, yung mga parents natin. So, uh, se Okay, so thank you, Dr. Ranoy, for our introductory talk regarding ADHD. For our audience, continue typing in your questions. I'll try to read them best as I can and incorporate them in our talk for tonight. And for those who are just tuning in, welcome to PISCAP Conversations in collaboration with the ADHD Society. Later on, for your certificates, please fill up the Google link posted in the chat box, after which you will receive the certificates of attendance. Uh, Doc Wina, isa na lang pala, one last bago kita pa mamaya. There is a question here na pwede po bang ma-inform ang teacher or advisor that their child has ADHD? Would that have an effect? Or ano ba yung masasabi mo doon?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it is very important to coordinate with the
Mm-mm.
teachers. Okay?
Mm-mm.
But disclosing the disorder itself, the diagnosis itself, well, it's up to you. Okay, depending on your level of comfort also. If
Mm-mm.
you think, because you would be able to assess also how the school is regarding these matters. No? May mga schools talaga that they encourage it. No? They encourage disclosure because that's the only way for them also to be able to help or
Yes.
address
Mm-mm.
what the problems are. Okay?
Mm-mm.
So, well, for me personally, I would encourage it.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
At if you disclose it, dapat alam ng anak mo. No? You cannot just disclose it just because your child is a minor. Pwede mo nang
Yes.
i-discuss with everyone. It is very
Mm-mm.
important for us to inform them and get also their consent.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Agree ako dyan, Doc. And then, last one, before I call in Mommy Patis. So, is the ADHD category changing, especially when an adult already? Is there mild ADHD? And then, is it the doctor giving the diagnosis? Uh, Later on na siguro this other one, Doc Wina. The first
Okay.
question lang muna. Mm-mm.
Okay. Is it changing? That's the first question.
The perspective, yeah, is there
Okay.
mild ADHD ba, Doktora?
Yes, mild, moderate, and severe. No, it depends on how many you
Symptoms.
uh, uh,
Mm-mm.
how many symptoms um, authentic
Mm-mm.
recognize. Okay, and so if there are more above 6, usually they classify it as severe.
Mm-mm.
And
Okay.
almost all the areas, more than what is needed for you to be diagnosed with ADHD. And then there really is a severity, mild, moderate.
Moderate severity. But regardless of the mild, moderate severity, I think uh, seeking consult and therapy will benefit regardless if it was mild, moderate, or severe. Uh, we want to start information and awareness with this talk or in conversations for tonight about more about ADHD. So, sana po, don't focus on the mild, moderate, severe as much. Kasi
Mhm.
minsan pag sinabing, ay, mild lang, hindi ko na muna ipapa-check up. Baka sayang yung time for intervention. So we have heard the background and theoretical. So what we see as the doctors in the clinic and how and what we can do for our children with ADHD during the pandemic. But things may be easier said than done, and those may not easily translate to how things are in the family level. So seeking consult during the pandemic may be tricky, and I would like to call on Mommy Patis to share her experiences regarding this one.
Hi, good
Mom.
evening once again. Hello. So, my name is Patricia FAmador, and I'm what they call an ADHD mom or an ADHD parent. I'm married and I have two daughters. One is already 17 and the other is 11. I work in the e-commerce industry or online shopping, kung alam niyo yun. And my work requires me to be online 24/7. So I'm very digitally connected. I have been mostly a career person than a mom. So when you look at me or when I'm more business than family. My husband is the one who has a flexible schedule. So he's the one who manages most of the household duties on weekdays. So my duty is in at night and weekends. Before the pandemic, I would be out the whole day during the weekdays for work, and I arrive already at home past dinner. I check on the kids for their homework, and if they have taken their showers na, and then after that, okay, open laptop na ulit ako and do work again. But like all kids, my second daughter, Lexi, would always think that she's different. She's unique. Why? Kasi she has been always OC, obsessive compulsive. She's OC with her stuff, where she puts them. She's OC with processes. So she's always parang schedule, parang military. We need to pray na, we need to eat na, we need to sleep na, etc. We also discovered early on her talent in art. We enrolled her in painting class when she was 5, and we've been amazed about her progress. She's now into air clay art. It's a different kind of clay, and it's sort of like doing shapes and different animals, etc. For school, si Lexi has had a tutor to review her for her lessons. She meets twice or thrice a week. And we learned early on kasi na it's much better to have a tutor to keep our own sanity and our daughter's sanity. Kasi kundi nag-aaway lang kami. At night, Lexi would remind us to pray. Make sure we pray before sleeping. And she'd go through all the regular prayers. Angel of God, Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be, etc. And Lexi would always have good grades at school. So when the lockdown started last year, the kids were doing their final exams. So because of the lockdown, their exams got canceled. So they enjoyed a longer summer break. So during that time, since it's lockdown, I was also forced to work from home. And I was still mostly online. So we enrolled Lexi to more art classes for that summer. Rather than once a week, we made it thrice a week na lang. But after that, she'd be left with a lot of gadget time. Kasi when to school, she was using an iPad. So when there's no school and there's nothing to do, she'd do the iPad. So when school started, online learning na, we noticed that Lexi had trouble focusing already in class. She would do something else, something with her hands while in class. And we noticed that she wasn't taking notes. When I check her notebook for whatever what was her lesson, what I'd see were all doodles or all drawings. Walang notes. So she started also to forget important schedules like quizzes or past lessons. So on our part, we had to take extra effort to check her emails and schedules every day to make sure na she did not miss any assignment. She also started to forget other things like the regular prayers na before sobrang memorize niya. So I had to remind her when we were praying na, Angel of God, Hail Mary, and then that's when she'd follow na. At this point also, during the lockdown, she started to eat more with her hands. She didn't want to use fork and spoon anymore. As much as she can, she'd use her hands, even eating spaghetti, soup, sinigang, lahat nakakamay. And she didn't want to wear slippers anymore at home. Since there's no school, you don't have to leave. She wasn't wearing, she's just in her feet all the time. She also became moody. She would get angry with her dad when we remind her to do her homework or take a bath. Sometimes even throwing a tantrum. There were times na due to her frustration, sa lesson, she would tear up her notebook to pieces. As in, I saw her once, and it was like super one by one, and you can feel the anger in her while she kept on tearing the paper in her not even notebook, in the textbook. And one time, I noticed that her hair had a shorter part in the front. And she mentioned na when I asked her that she cut it on her own, but nobody saw her. So because of those things that made us a bit worried already, we started reading up on what could possibly be wrong with her. But we really didn't know what to look for. So last March, so just this year, we decided to consult with a psychiatrist and a developmental pediatrician to check what was wrong with her. And we learned that that she got diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD, predominantly inattentive presentation with comorbid mood and anxiety issues. So at first our reaction was, ano yun? Ano yun? Hindi naman siya hyper. Hindi naman siya yung parang tumatalon-talon pag nakakita ko ng mga boys na tumatalon-talon. Hindi naman siya ganun eh. So that's when we had to know that we really had to understand it better. So like what Doktora mentioned earlier, hindi naman pala siya ibig sabihin na may ADHD, talon lang ng talon, takbo ng takbo. But it was really like at inattentiveness, etc. So we were so thankful na we had internet connection, na lahat ng keywords yata nang parang matatanong ko, na search ko na. And we have been constantly looking at websites to trying to find answers to our questions on ADHD.
When you were researching Mommy Patis, kasi parang there was concerns na, diba? And then researching, and then what was really the particular trigger or fuel for consult na talagang nakaantig na I really have to bring her na for check-up?
Kasi when we saw her in terms of yung na-mention ko yung cutting her hair, tearing down, I felt, especially during that time, di ba ngayon with the pandemic, parang ang daming mental health issues. And we know na parang a lot of people, even adults, are going through very hard times and sometimes being suicidal tendencies or something. So we were scared na baka mamaya, if we don't do something about it or check what it is, baka hindi namin siya ma-manage. Hindi, di ba? And she's so young nga. And parang we saw nga in her mood swings na parang hindi siya nag-listen if she doesn't want to listen eh. So parang how can we, baka mamaya may iba na siyang gagawin, hindi na namin siya alam. So it really moved us to do something about it. Talaga.
But how, kasi it's pandemic, Mommy Patis. How was the consult done? And then like, was it easy, difficult? How was your experience about that one?
Um, so at first, we didn't really know who to talk to, di ba?
Mm-mm.
To be honest, yung developmental pediatrician na term, nalaman na lang namin siya with when we were researching on about it. Kasi, di ba usually nadidinig mo, psychology, psychiatrist, ganyan.
Mm-mm.
So when we were trying to get a schedule, hirap, mahaba, I mean yung matagal. And parang,
Mm-mm.
syempre parang di pong, baka mami kung ano na nangyari sa anak ko by how many months from now. And,
Mm-mm.
and of course with pandemic, we also cannot bring her outside. So, when we were able to get a consult schedule, we did it online. It's face-to-face online. Tama ba?
Yes.
So
Mm-mm, yes.
it was a video call. We spent 1 or 2 hours depending on the session. And may time na it's with parents and then may time with our daughter only and then sometimes with parents as well. So it was pure online.
Mm. Doc Rina, there's a question here also from our FB, lead connected with Mommy Patisa said about the developmental pediatrician and the child psychiatrist. When do you see a child psychiatrist? When do you see the dev ped? Or do you see both? Uh, Alin ang mare-recommend natin, Doc Rina?
Mhm. Well, you can see both because both are equipped to manage ADHD.
Mm-mm.
Although I have experience that many neurodevelopmental pediatricians would refer to child psychiatrists when they recognize that there are other conditions other than the symptoms of ADHD. So one of them would be anxiety, depression, OCD,
Mhm.
subpositional defiant disorders, conduct disorders. No? They refer those conditions to child psychiatrists.
Mm. Uh, we early on we were talking amongst ourselves that it's really a team approach. It's not just one doctor. There's usually several doctors helping one child. So a lot of child psychiatrists will refer to a developmental pediatrician and the other way around kasi iba yung strengths ng different specialties. Uh, Doc
I
Rina,
just want to add,
yes.
I just want to add, Angel. Yes, we work closely with the developmental pediatricians.
Mm-mm.
So it's actually very nice, no, that we're able to communicate and help each other in managing one patient.
Yes.
So still, the best is a multidisciplinary approach to one patient.
Patient. So we really encourage hopefully a multidisciplinary approach kasi the more aspects are targeted for the child.
So again, no, there are cases talaga na it's just for developmental
Yes,
pediatrician.
for pediatrician. So especially if there are already comorbid conditions, yan, napapatawag na rin kami. Yung comorbid are the frustrations and some of the symptoms that Mommy Patis mentioned already. Yes, Mommy Patis?
Okay. So to continue, so na-mention kanina, we learned din at that time that ADHD was hereditary. So yung naging question namin ng husband ko, kanino siya nagmana? Kanino sa akin ba sa'yo? So siguro naisip ko talaga, I mean, you know, when it's at the start, you really don't know anything pa or everything is so up in the air. Baka kaya ako intense person kasi may ADHD din ako. So anyway, on that part, si Lexi was prescribed to drink medication. No? And before this happened, she never drank tablets. So nagkaroon pa kami ng challenge to go through the part na she had to learn to drink tablets. So, dumaan kami sa tic-tac, M&M, honey, peanut butter, just to make her be able to drink the tablet. And I think on that part, we also had to explain to her why she had to drink it. Nung start, talagang parang, why do I even have, you parang making me drink it, ganyan. So, we really had to explain to her as much as she can understand on what ADHD was and how it's affecting her. So, with this, we also had to keep Lexi in a schedule. What time she wakes up, eats, sleeps, takes a bath, what time she needs to study, etc. From before na we just let her be, now we need to be on our toes to make sure that she follows her schedule, or else magugulo na lahat. With the pandemic, we already had our own personal struggles that time. And this new setup wasn't helping us at all. Each one of us in the family would have our own breakdown moments. But we really didn't know where we were and what to do. So parang yung kanina na mention lang na parang nagtitake turns. So if today is my day to cry, bukas sa asawa ko. And bukas the other night naman sa isang daughter namin or etc. So with all the research that we were doing, I stumbled upon ADHD Society of the Philippines. So, and I didn't know na may ganun. Kasi when you Google, it's usually abroad. And sabi ko, may anong palang group on that. So there must be possibly a lot of others who are experiencing this. So when I contacted them in the email, I joined their parent support group. And that's where I realized na we were not alone. Na there were other families who were facing the same challenges or even more challenges than us. Maraming matagal na, marami na silang na-experience. Meron ding bago katulad ko. As in, same month pa kami na-diagnose ng kids namin. And we're all on the learning phase pa. We also learned that there were a lot of successful people who has ADHD. Like sila Bill Gates, Emma Watson ng Harry Potter. And recently yung gold medalist sa Olympics na si Simone Biles. And so I see that you can thrive. You can thrive talaga even if you have it. So I learned in one of the webinars I also watched that on how the perspective of looking at ADHD is. And I like how it was mentioned that it's like our eyesight. Now if we have poor eyesight, we wear glasses para we can see clear. Pero once you remove it, poor eyesight ka pa rin. So with ADHD, it will always be there. But we just need to learn to manage it. And we can function pretty well and excel in whatever we do. But it's just there. So we need to, ang realization ko dun is that we need to see the giftedness in Lexi. Where can she excel? What will be her eyeglasses? And how she can excel in whatever she wants. So now we're still in ECQ. As mentioned, hindi pa natin alam kung ano yung status natin by tomorrow. And I'm back to work 3 times a week already. I still work when I get home. But what's different now is that I make sure that I spend bonding time with Lexi when I get home. Kids also have started their new school year. So we've moved Lexi from a traditional school to a progressive school, which can be more flexible to her needs. And Lexi goes to therapy to improve her executive function twice a month. She's also doing Taekwondo now, twice a week, to help manage her energy. And we also, as a family, hold movie nights during weekends and make conversation during mealtime. So ngayon, we are now sanay to watch movies na kahit may nagsasalita the whole time. Kasi si Lexi, tanong siya ng tanong. So on our part, we're still in that continuous learning, trying to understand what ADHD is and what how we can hone or improve the way we work around it as a family and as individuals, and how we can help Lexi be better. And also us, there is also the part of parenting on how we can improve ourselves as parents with an ADHD child. But what really helps is really the tandem of the husband and wife, that we are always aligned and we support each other, and we make sure that our family understands where we are, and that we will always be there for each other, whatever happens. So that's my sharing for all of you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mami Patis. Hearing your story, we can see the struggle of a family having to discover that their child has ADHD or other disorders. But I would like to commend you also for how you dealt with it. Parang, yes, it was so disheartening seeing your daughter, and you, I'm sure there was a time na parang you were feeling helpless. But you you went out there and you asked for help. You were seeking help. And even now. So I think this is a very inspiring story, and I hope everyone who hears about this, what you did, what you're doing, would be inspired and
Yes.
would be hopeful.
Mm-mm. I agree
Thank
with
you.
Dr. Ravina, Mommy Patis. It's quite a journey for you as a parent, even during
Now,
the pandemic. Pandemic pa siya. And I'm not sure if it's a silver lining of the pandemic kasi mas, I guess, mas na-focus lang. It was placed into focus kasi everybody was at home, 'di ba? And I'm not sure if it happened wala pa yung pandemic, kung ganun tayo ka-attuned with our kids, 'di ba? So silver lining in something
Yes.
nobody wants right now, but it's a very very uh inspiring journey talaga, Mommy Patis.
Thank you.
So thank you for that one, Mommy Patis. So we have heard a parent's experience, and to complete our circle, we also need to know how things are from the perspective of somebody with ADHD, and to better understand their struggles and how they are rising from these adversities. I would like to call in our teen speaker, Nico. Good good evening, Nico.
Good evening po.
good evening.
Sorry. Eh, ako yung tinawag.
Good evening, Mommy Badette.
Good, good evening to our doctors and guests and everyone who tuned in today. You can call me Nico. Forgive me if I'm a little shy because this is my first time to go on a live stream. According to my parents, when I was 3, I was diagnosed with the developmental language delay and was told to attend school early so I can be with talkative classmates. My preschool teacher told my mother that I was like a supervisor because I would always stand up and go around the classroom. When I turned 7 years old, as soon as I entered grade 1, I was confused why I cannot focus and keep forgetting and losing things. I always daydreaming and hear what the adults are telling me while thinking of other stuff. I felt disorganized and was everywhere, playing trains and shift the cars to drawing right away. In class, I seldom write what the teacher tell us to do and not pay attention. Reading was very difficult for me. I see letters inverted or even if I know how to sound off the letter. Reading activity was scary for me. I even cried when it will be my turn to read, get get nervous when I need to read in school. I love numbers and patterns, and I love playing the Minecraft game. My parents said I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 7. I have an older brother with autism and a sister who is deaf. In our house, my parents gave us rules to follow, job charts for chores, and a schedule we follow to help us be organized with our tasks for school and at home. We were not allowed to watch violence on TV and online, and we're not allowed to use gadget every day, but only on weekends. It helped me to be more organized on what I need to do. Although I still would go out of focus if I can help because I can help but think of other stuff even if someone is talking to me. When they enrolled me to Taekwondo, I used to tell my coach it's hard, I'm tired, that I cannot do it, but it helped me gain self-esteem and confidence. I'm now a brown belter, but I cannot say I'm great at it, but I learned from my parents and coach to keep me trying to be better. When lockdown happened, I first got confused what was happening. When my parents explained and made us watch a short documentary about COVID, that was that was when I felt a little scared and it was hard, especially seeing or hearing people getting sick and some dying from it. Our school gave us exam that we need to pass online classes on because everyone was not allowed to go out. I like doing online classes because I am just at home and I don't get wet when it's raining like before going to school. When the school year ended, staying at home was okay with us because we are used to staying indoor even before the lockdown. But what I miss the most is going out of town with my family for vacations, swimming with my cousin, and the Christmas season where we can see all our families and relatives. As time passed by, realized it has been 2 years that that has passed and we are still indoor. But we are used to it now. My parents taught us to make use of what we have and be contented with it. We also prayed the rosary online together with our family for 2 years, even before the lockdown. And it has also helped us cope with how hard life is by keeping our faith. When I am bored, I just draw, read comics, and play with Lego. My parents also taught us to exercise and we do indoor biking every morning. My parents also enrolled us in an IT bootcamp. We learned to do Excel sheets, PowerPoint presentation, and video editing. And that was my favorite part. It was hard, but I really enjoyed it the most. Pandemic is very real and very scary. My parents restrict us from hearing the news so that we do not worry much. They just tell us that it is best to stay at home and pray that everything will be okay soon. My parents told me I have ADHD. They tell us my kuya has autism, but they never treat us differently. They always make us try new things even if I don't like it. They say that we will never know if we don't like it unless we try. ADHD is the reason why it's making me forget things, disorganized, or out of focus. There are days that it can be hard and days when I feel angry, so angry that I couldn't focus. Sometimes when I get angry with myself and ask myself why it is so hard to pay attention. Sometimes I get so wound up with my emotion that I explode. My mother would tell me to control my emotion, but sometimes I can't. I know I have ADHD, but I don't understand what ADHD really is. But what I know is I am not sad or angry that I have ADHD. I just live like just like any teenager does. But I hope as I grow older, I can understand slowly what ADHD is because of my parents' way of accepting and advocating for us. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Nico.
Doc Rina.
The way you describe your experiences at this time of pandemic, Nico, this is how many of kids like you experience it. So I'm sure many can relate to you. But I would also like to highlight your attitude about having ADHD. You said you're not angry, you're not sad, you're just dealing with it. And I'm so glad to hear that from someone so young like you.
Okay
Yes.
po.
Oh.
Yes. uh, that was very inspiring, Nico. How do you feel? This is your first live streaming.
At first, I get really nervous but more excited. But it feels like I was telling in front of the audience, like face to face.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking earlier on that you would cry sometimes before because you had to speak in front of an audience, and I'm very proud. A lot of comments are coming in. Thank you, Nico. Very inspiring sharing, Nico. Great job. Um, you have overcome this part that you were crying before, but now you handled it like a pro. And we are all very thankful for sharing your experiences, Nico.
Okay.
Mhm. A lot
Thank you.
talaga. I'll read some. Thank you so much, Nico. I have a young adult sister just diagnosed with ADHD, and your experience are really helpful for us to understand her more. So talaga, ikaw, very, very good. Great job. And meron ding mga comments. Congratulations to the parents of Nico for bringing up a very good son.
Thank
Yeah.
you po.
Mm. Ah, a lot more talaga of congratulatory. Really, Nico and Mommy, very, very good job. And uh, leading me to our support systems, which are very important. They give us comfort when you know that you're not alone, as Mommy Patis mentioned earlier, that somebody else understands. So, learning more about the condition helps the patient and the family and fosters community support and building. Thankfully, we have the ADHD Society of the Philippines. There were some questions earlier about it, and then Mommy Alu will be talking more about ADHD, its activities, and calling on Mommy Alu to share
Hello.
more about it.
Hello, good evening again. So I am Alu Aran. I am here to represent the ADHD Society of the Philippines. The ADHD Society of the Philippines is a 20-year-old NGO nonprofit organization. It's organized by concerned parents and leading developmental pediatricians back in 2000. So we are also available online. We have a website now flashed on your screen, FB page and forum. You can reach us through email. So similarly to what Mommy Patis did, she reached out to us. So what are we doing at present? With the pandemic, we have moved our support groups online. So we have support group for parents, adults, and teens. This is an informal group meeting, so persons with ADHD and their parents can both learn about, the condition through our NLP practitioner. Uh, we we talk about day-to-day activities, we share exchange tips on, how to manage tantrums or what do we do. And sometimes this is just for the parent to share whatever complicated or pressing concerns that they have. Us in ADHD, we believe that it takes a village to raise a child. And we are here to create a community that will support, encourage the parents and the persons with ADHD to feel na hindi sila nag-iisa. I think the most damaging part is when your child finally gets diagnosed or you don't know what's happening, you tend to blame yourself. But in reality, hindi lang ikaw yon. There are some things we can do together. You can learn from other parents. It can be either be through medication, therapy, interventions. And there are things that you can do at home, sometimes even diet. So, given that, this coming October, we will celebrate our ADHD Awareness Month. So, Presidential Proclamation 472 said that October is our month. And the 30th of October, October 17 to 23, we, the Board of Trustees, prepared a lot of activities for people with ADHD, and we call it Alagang ADHD. We do care. We will offer some speech and OT assessments. We have webinars, podcasts, cooking demo for parent and child. And sabi nga ni Doktora, meron din kami meditation session because that's really one of the coping mechanisms that we found that is good in releasing some of the stress. So, we look forward to having you join us again in October.
Mommy Alu, 'di ba there are programs before the pandemic. What were the challenges in transitioning yung support groups natin from face-to-face to online?
Before, it was face to face, so we have a unit, we have an office in Katipunan, so some parents go there, and sometimes because of traffic, minsan dalawa lang or tatlo lang mag-a-attend, but we still go on. And one of the things that we did was kami na mismo, we go to the different disability persons office, and then we go to different cities like Mandaluyong to conduct the parent support group. We have in Alabang, we have North sessions. But because of the pandemic, online na ngayon, we even have parents joining us from outside the country. Meron na rin kaming from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. So, tama din tayo kahit na pandemic, may blessing siya. Ang blessing niya is we were able to reach more household. So, even yung parent support group namin, dati isa lang, dalawa na siya ngayon, yung adult support group namin, magiging dalawa na rin to be able to accommodate a bigger group of people.
Mhm. So dumami, Mommy Alu, yung mga participants and our supporters for the ADHD Society.
Yes, dumami siya, tsaka we were able to reach, you know, we have parents joining us from the US, we have parents
Mhm.
joining us from South Cotabato, so it really is a good time for us to be able to support and care for them and just to tell them na hindi kayo nag-iisa.
Mm-mm. Are some of the programs ba, Mommy Alu, includes some other resources or help? Because we have a question here that ADHD is an expensive disease and may need to have lifelong management. What are the resources or help that can be provided for those who have financial limitations?
What we have hospitals that offer free assessments, and we, for example, they call us and they tell us we need this, we refer them to doctors. Sometimes there are organizations in provinces, also in some of the areas here in Metro Manila, that provides free assessments, pero wala pa ako naririnig na merong free medication, no? Normally, what they offer is free assessment, and then tuturuan yung parents how to manage the children, and then time to time they just bring the child for reassessment, pero it is really very expensive. So the parent support group,
Mm-mm.
in a way, is not a medical, no way we are a medical team, but we, as parents, we share what worked in our household and pwede niyong
Yeah.
itry in your house as well.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. I think having the ADHD Society, Mommy Alu, is already a step towards treatment and a step towards learning. Uh, 'di ba, the community, it really takes a village, it takes the community to help a child. And even though, I guess, the financial aspect, yung ma-assess lang, malaking bagay na siya eh.
Totoo, totoo.
Ma-start lang yung intervention.
I think it's really the battle of the mind. Kasi pag na-confuse ka, all your decisions might not be working for you. So, if you get clarity, if you get finality, if you get assessment, and then you reach out for others, katulad ni Mommy pati, she researched. So, malaking
Mhm.
tulong na yon. Malaking
Mm.
tulong na yon.
Mommy Alu, is there a membership fee to join the
Yes,
organization?
yes. We have three levels of membership. For regular, this is for the family, 500 pesos. If you're an associate, a doctor, or a therapist, a counselor, we offer 600 pesos for associate fee membership. And then if you're a corporation like a therapy center, a speech center, would like to join us, we have 2,500 as membership fee.
Mhm. So I think it's important to look into this one because again,
Yes.
community. If you need to join, yes. Mm-mm.
And then we have a small group of people. We have coaches, we have NLP, na neuro linguistic practitioners, we have the deaf peds. So we come together if there are people who really need more help. We do try to come together for that. In fact, yung support group din namin, we have one wherein we invite um, even those who are, they're saying na nangangailangan talaga ng tulong, we cater to them in a way na kailangan din we make sure that our language is suitable to them. Parang hindi
Mm-mm.
lahat naka-English kasi hindi lahat nakakaintindi husay ng English. So we try to speak to their language, or sometimes our coordinator calls them directly also.
Mm-mm. Okay. Mommy Alu, would you like to invite them again to the activities that you posted?
Yes, actually, would like to invite everybody to please join us. You can register in our website, send us a private message in our Facebook or group page. You can come and volunteer and help us promote the condition, and the society as well, na kayang-kaya, hindi kayo nag-iisa. We also invite you to donate if you'd like to donate. And lastly, we invite everyone to please spread the word na may ADHD. There's also an ADHD society that can support and care for people with ADHD and their families. So let me take this opportunity to thank, our audience, Peace Cup, together with Dr. Rhea, Dr. Vanessa, Dr. Daryl, Dr. Inch. And thank you very much for allowing us to be part of your webinars. It's really very important for us to be in touch with the village that we want to have, the supportive village that we want to have. So thank you very much.
Mhm. Thank you, Mommy Alu. Makulit kami. It's really important to rely on our village and to be
Yes.
able to participate in support group programs. Sometimes it's too technical yung when you're in the clinic, when it's the doctor explaining. A lot of child psychiatrists and developmental pediatricians and the life coaches, we do try. Kaya lang sometimes if it's and then we do explain definitely, but it the understanding hits differently if it's coming from another parent who is going through the same thing. So the ADHD Society provides this support to the teens and their family. So when the
Yes.
family understands how to support their child with ADHD, this leads to better communication and fosters growth for their teens. So thank you very much, Mommy Alu. Really do try to join their upcoming activities for the National ADHD Week. So uh, okay, we are almost nearing the end of our webinar for tonight. Um, I'd like to remind everybody for your certificate of attendance. This one will be posted at the chat box. Also, we would like to invite you to like or follow the YouTube channel of the PISCAP. Some of your questions regarding this webinar, the webinars are actually going to be in the YouTube of the PISCAP. So, so thank you very much for those who are still listening in, even at this time. The silver lining with the stay-at-home situation of this pandemic is that parents are now able to observe their children in a school setting. And I hope that the talk of Dr. Ranoy have given you some insights on when to seek help and what you can do to help our kids during these times. The structure, the routine that we can provide will not only help our children with ADHD, but will actually benefit all kids during the pandemic. Also, don't forget to take care of yourselves. Um, as parents, as caregivers, you have to be mindful. As Dr. Rina said, mindful parenting. Take care of yourselves. When you are okay, your kids will also be okay. Take note of the learning bursts that Dr. mentioned, the alternative learnings, and other activities and favorite activities of your child are still very important. It's not just school, it's not just in front of the screen. Part of the structure and the routine should include play and favorite activities. So we have heard from Mami Patis her experience with seeking consult during the pandemic, and we had a lot of comments thanking Mami Patis for for sharing her experiences. Um, there are a variety of options that you can do to help with your children with ADHD, and Mommy Patis utilized this one by joining the ADHD community. She also had a multidisciplinary approach and was able to seek help from different specialists. We have also been inspired by Nico. It is important to be childlike and see the situation from the perspective of our teens with ADHD. Sometimes we just look at it from the outside, but Nico was very inspiring and he was able to manage a lot and overcome a lot, and so can your kids with ADHD. I cannot reiterate the importance of community. It really takes a village to raise a child, and it can be challenging, most especially now, but you are not alone. The ADHD Society of the Philippines have support group programs for teens and adults with ADHD and for their families. When we are involved with the community, this helps decrease mood problems of the child and the parents and increases our feelings of belongingness. It has been quite a night with a lot of insights and hopefully a lot of learnings and awareness regarding ADHD. As we are nearing the end of the program, again, I would like to thank you for joining us, and I would like to remind the participants to answer the post-evaluation form to receive your certificate of attendance. I would like also again to remind you to subscribe to the PISCAP Virtual Library YouTube channel for the webinar topics presented by PISCAP, and also to join us for the third and last PISCAP conversation that will be held on September. So to wrap up, I would now like to call on Dr. Rodora Concepcion, the President of the PISCAP, for our closing remarks.
Good evening to everyone, to all our speakers and our audience who joined us in tonight's webinar of the Philippine Society for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in collaboration with the ADHD Society of the Philippines. The coronavirus pandemic has changed the way we live our lives. We deal with all the challenges of the repeated imposition of lockdowns, quarantine, and safety measures. The transition was so sudden and everybody is not ready for it. Self-regulation practices have become difficult for most of us, especially for the vulnerable population. our children with ADHD, and the challenges parents and families have to deal with all these changes and when behavior seems difficult to manage. Students with ADHD often need order to their day to be able to function their best. Due to these lockdowns, children are expected to spend time inside home. For children with ADHD, it is known that staying inside a home in a situation like a lockdown can be extremely difficult. This can become a source of disturbance to family members, and families can have problems in handling them. Parents and families struggle to help these children in organizing and managing time, working on tasks in these stressful times. It is in these lockdown situations that we want to know how children with ADHD and parents are dealing with these symptoms. We wanted to understand the behavioral issues of children and families and how it is to get locked down with ADHD. And tonight's discussion, presented by all our excellent speakers, gave us an understanding of the impact of COVID 19 and lockdowns on children with ADHD and their families. The Philippine Society for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, in collaboration with the ADHD Society of the Philippines, would like to thank our speakers for a productive exchange and discussion here in Peace Cup Conversations talk show series in this month of August on Locked Down with ADHD, stories of family struggles in overcoming the challenges of ADHD in the time of the pandemic. To Dr. Genuina Ranoy of the Philippine Society for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, to Ms. Alu Aran, the current president of the ADHD Society of the Philippines, to our parent speaker, Patricia Ann FAmador, and to our teen speaker, Nicoli Bastien Tabares, and his mom, Mrs. Badet Tabares. Peace Cup sincerely thank all of you for your valuable contribution and participation in this webinar. Our acknowledgement also, of course, to Dr. Princess Nespral, our moderator, for facilitating an engaging discussion tonight. Likewise, PeaceCap would like to sincerely thank Medichem for their kind support and partnership for the PeaceCap Conversations talk show series. Medichem is our pharmaceutical partner from July to September 2021 in this webinar series. PeaceCap would like to sincerely thank our friends in Medicam for their assistance in bringing this webinar to all of us tonight. They are Mr. Jonal Bautista, Mr. Hans Makatangay, and Mr. Peter Rayson Claudio. Our acknowledgements, of course, to Dr. Daryl Calleja and Dr. Vanessa Kainhug as coordinators for this month's webinar. To the Peace Cup Organizing Committee, our acknowledgement for their technical support to Drs. Daryl Calleja, Dr. Jennifer Duway, Dr. Christine Avery, Pauline Nang Lim, and Dia Modesto. We hope that you could all join us again next month. Please save the date on September 16, 2021 for Real Talk, the opportunity and challenge of talking about sexuality and sexual development with our atypical teens during the pandemic. This is Dr. Rodora Andrea Concepcion. Thank you very much for sharing with us your time, and thank you for your kind attention. Good night and good health to everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Concepcion. We have reached as much as 300 participants tonight, both in Zoom and in Facebook Live. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. We had a very lively discussion, and I hope most questions in the chat box and in the FB Live was answered. You can join the ADHD Society with the numbers that Miss Mommy Alu posted earlier. So again, I cannot thank you enough for learning more about ADHD with us. So to close our program, we will be listening to the Piscap hymn. For our panelists, please stay on for our group photo after this one. I'd like to remind you all to please follow health protocols. Keep safe, everyone, and good night.
Voices speak from far and wide, generation seeking a future bright, supporting and protecting every child, moving together to shape, discipline and guide. To listen when they're speaking, hear when great minds are debating, believing these are the future leaders in the making. The young explore, discover, early in life arising. When pain in every wound seeks healing, our child's most precious life we touch, we're saving resilience when families and children battle suffering. Is every nation's strength and wealth for winning. Serving to promote mental health and well-being, we take the duty to lead, to care for compassionate healing, to nurture disease, to grow the human race of tomorrow. Serving to promote mental health and well-being, we take the duty to lead, to care for compassionate healing, to nurture disease, to grow